Alright, let's make a new video. This one is on orders and sacrifice. Now, traditionally, especially when it comes to the military, there's a command structure. You have an officer, and you have those under them. Now, depending on the rank, sometimes officers can be under other officers, sometimes it's NCOs, sometimes it's regular servicemen. It all depends, of course. But when an officer gives an order, when it says, here's what we are to do, and they give it out to their servicemen and those other people under them, why should they follow that order? Now, the military has established codes for this. It is the rules that you follow your orders unless they are proven illegal. So, if this is illegal, according to the rules of war and other regulations that the government has, don't obey. For example, just killing a person without any justification is illegal. You should not obey an order that just says, kill all people. However, if legal, that's a court-martial if you don't obey at minimum. But now let's think about it outside of a military context, shall we? Let's say instead we are looking at a branch manager. This person handles a specific part of a business. And you have the employees under them. Why should they obey an order? Sure, they're getting paid, but if the branch manager isn't the one firing or hiring them and can only suggest it, why should they? Why should they obey? Even if the branch manager can fire them, that still raises the question of, okay, why should we listen to you when we don't know you'll fire us? And even if you do, we have other options. Well, the simple reason is, does it get results? The point of veterancy and general organization with a hierarchy is to ensure that the best and most qualified people are at the top and thus give good orders for those who aren't as experienced or used to what needs to be done. Now, is this always the case? No, it isn't. Sometimes an officer is an idiot, sometimes the CEO is an idiot. Other times, employees or servicemen are idiots. Frankly, stupidity is not limited by one's station in any regard. But the basic principle still exists. The person at the top gives orders because they believe it is best to ensure results for the company or other organization that they are a part of. Could be military, could be companies, could be anything really. So long as it's an organization with a hierarchy, the person at the top gives orders to those at the bottom to ensure the best outcome for their organization. At least that's what's supposed to happen. But here's a question. If something hurts, for example, let's say the employees are ordered to work overtime. They'll get paid for it, but they're forced to work overtime. Why should they obey such an order if their branch manager is not willing to pick up the pace on their own work, is not willing to do overtime themselves? Why should you honestly obey, morally? You shouldn't. Sure, you might say, well, it'll help the company, but at the same time, if you're doing something that those above you, those who gave the order and deemed it beneficial, aren't willing to, that makes no sense. More importantly, it is a testament against the order itself. An officer not willing to do their own orders because they're worried about the punishment should not give such an order to their servicemen under them. They shouldn't give such an order, period. If you are not willing to do what you order, you should not order it. If you, in all your wisdom, understand a thing to be right to do, you should not be the one excused from it. Apologies. I don't know if you heard that noise, but a football game is going on, and one of my parents is very happy. Yes, she is an Eagles fan. Anyways, back to the subject. An order, which a person is not willing to follow, but willing to give, is effectively an order without confidence, an order a person does not trust. Why? Because if you believe something to be right, but you are not willing to suffer the consequences of that decision, then you do not really believe it is right, you merely believe that you will benefit. But the goal, again, is not your benefit when you give an order. The goal is the organization's benefit. So if you give an order that you don't want to suffer the consequences of, then you are effectively a coward. You are willing to benefit and profit off of others' suffering without being willing to suffer yourself. That is, in all forms, cowardice, and it should not be accepted nor tolerated. As such, a person should be willing to obey their own orders. If a manager orders overtime, they should be willing to do overtime alongside their employees. If an officer orders something, they should be willing to commit to that something, even if it is illegal. Why? Because if you give an order as an officer and aren't willing to do it, legal or no, you are essentially saying, I don't care about those under me. That is not right, in the slightest. But here's a question. What about death? Let me give you an example. The United States federal government has over 1 million soldiers under its employ. All of these soldiers are subject to the Commander-in-Chief. The National Guard also is and can be called up by the Commander-in-Chief as a militia under certain circumstances. The only limiting factor is if it's not a crime organization that has a local nature to it. If you're a terrorist, yes, the government can call the National Guard. But if you're just a small criminal gang, no, they can't. With all these rules and regulations, the important thing still stands, though. The President of the United States is Commander-in-Chief of all these million people. And since that's the case, over 1 million people could be ordered to die by one person. It is entirely within the President's right as Commander-in-Chief to order an invasion. It is also entirely within their right to tell their soldiers, hey, just charge at the enemy, you don't need to do anything special, just charge a machine gun, see how it goes. Yes, the President can do that. Is it a smart thing to do? No. Is it any way wise or tactical? No. But they can do it. If you are not willing to obey an order of your own making, then you should not order it. But what of death? To order a man to their death is to essentially say that you believe the loss of their life brings more than is lost in it. That more lives are saved or preserved through it. So how do you, as an officer, Commander-in-Chief, or whatever role you have, live up to that? Maybe you're a politician who's about to vote on going to war. You're effectively voting and ordering that our troops are used in offensive and defensive fashions, which will naturally lead to their deaths. So how does one sacrifice part of themselves, just as they would sacrifice for someone else, in less severe situations? Well, you can't really do it short of literally committing suicide. But as that is a immoral act in and of itself, should not be advocated for, nor should it be done. So really, the only answer I can see is accepting your own death. In such cases where you are willing to order the death of someone else to achieve your ends, you should accept, in part, the risk of your own death as a result of these actions, and more importantly, accept with it that assassination is very possible, and your death, in order to achieve the results you seek, is acceptable. That is not a very acceptable thing to a lot of people, but it is the only way to avoid cowardice. Why? Simple. If you are not willing to accept your own death, but are willing to accept another's, you are hiding behind the dead. That is wrong. Nor is it very effective, because no person wants to hear about how their commander just said, "Oh yeah, just charge at the enemy, don't die," while they're safely in their bunker. No one is going to want to follow you in such a case. So, when you give an order, even if it results in death, or the possibility arises, you must accept the ability to either do it yourself, or if it's something you can't do without literally keeling over and dying, to accept the responsibility and costs that are associated with it on yourself. In the case of something that leads to death, that means accepting the possibility of your own death, and accepting that your death is an acceptable cost in turn. That'll be all. Thank you very much for listening.